Hi, and welcome to the National New Teacher Support Podcast, brought to you by New Teacher University. The National New Teacher Support Podcast is a podcast for teachers, by teachers, and I'm your principal and host, Dr. Terry Ross. I'm so excited today to have a guest with us, Ms. Yasha Chapman. Ms. Chapman is the CEO of Elementary Education Evolved. And I discovered Ms. Chapman on LinkedIn. I was so excited that we crossed each other paths because she has a great story and a great company that she started to help new teachers and teachers in school districts, period, across this country. So here on the National New Teacher Support Podcast, we're here to give you the strategies that you need to be successful in the classroom, because we want your first years to be your foundational years and your best years. So Ms. Chapman, if you would introduce yourself at this time and tell us, why did you start Elementary Education Evolved?
Yes, so like you said, my name is Yasha Chapman. I am a Savannah, Georgia native. I am an educator, a former educator. I've been a classroom teacher, instructional coach, curriculum coordinator, tutor, and now I have the pleasure of coaching teachers, specifically new teachers, as well as new instructional coaches all over the country, specifically focusing on the mission of closing the academic achievement gap for Black and Brown students in elementary. And so what got me started, what started Elementary Education Evolved, was just like I shared with you earlier, I'm a military spouse. And so I'm fortunate enough to move in different regions of the country. And as I did that, constantly remaining in education, I noticed the trend that Black and Brown students remained underserved. They remained unattended to. Strategies weren't specific for them. Classroom environments did not cater to them. And so I have now made it my mission to go and train specifically new teachers to equip them with the tools that they need to get success in the classroom, to close the gaps, and most importantly, remain in education.
So thank you, Ms. Chapman, for that. And thank you for agreeing to be a guest on the National New Teacher Support Podcast. And today we're going to talk about goal getters, teaching with a purpose. And I love that you said goal getters, because every time we step in that classroom, we have to step in with a purpose, and we need to have some goals. And we need to have some measurable goals, because that's the only way we're going to know where we're going. And then if we know where we're going, we can create a map and a blueprint to get there. So thank you for sharing this with us today. Yes. So the first thing you talked about is you talked about how to set objectives using SMART goals. First of all, what are SMART goals, and why would teachers want to use SMART goals to establish objectives in their classroom?
Right. So SMART goals is the acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And so you want to be specific in what it is that you're looking for your students. You want to make sure that you are measuring something so that you have like a baseline or something to relate it to. You want to make sure that it is achievable, meaning that it is in the zone of proximity for that student. It is something that they are able to do within that quarter, so that the teacher can see a quick turnaround. And you want to make sure, again, that is relevant to what you're teaching, to the curriculum, to where you are in the school year, and that is timely, that you are adjusting instruction in real time so that you don't create any further gaps.
So what would that look like for a new teacher? Let's just say he or she walks into the classroom and they're following the curriculum, and they get their first set of common assessment data back, and they see where their students are. What would they do with that data how would they use that data to establish a SMART goal?
Okay, so for example, I'm just going to take kindergarten. So say you have a kindergarten class and you assessed letter and alphabet recognition. And so you created 10 students out of 20. Only half of your class are able to recognize all 26 letters. So then what you would do is create a goal that say, okay, if it's August, so by October, which gives you 2 months, that's enough time to do it. 100% or 80% of my students will be able to read recognize 20 out of 26 of the letters. And so that way you have a set goal as to when it's going to be achieved by. You have the specific number, how many out of 26 there should be able to recognize. You have the specific measure of what percentage of students you want to have achieved this goal and the time that you're going to have it done by. And so from August to October, you are intensely working on those students who don't have the ability to recognize letters, and you're working on that every day until 80% have indeed met that goal.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing that. And that's just making sure that even though the curriculum may say that by February all of the students will know it, you can set your own goals for where you want to be in your classroom.
Absolutely.
Because there are some kindergartens that they learn the alphabet throughout the year. They may not make it to the 26 until way over in the year. I've never understood that. However, because I came from an era where you learned them all right then. You learned your sounds, you learned everything right there. That was done early in the program before you even moved on. And you had that by definitely by October. So I'm glad that you shared that. So new teachers, it's important that your expectations are higher. Than the district.
Absolutely.
Higher than your schools, because that's the only way you're going to make sure your students are getting there. Now, we don't want you to spend all of your time worrying and working 2 hours before and 2 hours after school, because one thing about New Teacher University, we're also wanting to make sure that teachers know that you don't walk into the classroom with this mindset that I'm the savior and I have to do all of this work to save children. We want teachers to just be solid teachers, and that you go in and you're able to do it every day. So thank you for sharing that with our new teachers about setting SMART goals and knowing how to set them for their curriculum and using the data for it. So the next thing you talked about was progress monitoring. How do you use, when you set those SMART goals, how do you set progress monitoring or academic monitoring for, or some people call it aggressive monitoring? What do you aggressive monitor for? What do you progress monitor for, and how do you do it?
So I would say you progress monitor for the meeting of standards. You progress monitor for just goals and skills that students should have by the end of a grade level. And so you're constantly tracking to see where they started. You want a baseline. You always want to start with a pre-assessment of where your students are beginning. One, so you can see how much they've grown, and also for yourself as a teacher, so you can take that moment to be self-reflective of your practices. What work got you to that point? And so after you progress monitor, so after you get your baseline, then you want to just continue to monitor that skill over time. So say, for example, that for that quarter is narrative writing. You want to get just a rough draft, give the students a topic and have them do narrative writing on their own. That's without your instruction. That's without providing them with strategies, just to see what skills they have and where they're working with. Now, as you go through and you deliver your instruction, depending on what skills you hit, then you want to take that and monitor for how they're progressing. With every written piece, but I would say at least 3 to 4, you want to make a copy of your students' work and just keep it in their, like a personal student portfolio. And so that way, and I would do that for each subject. I would do it for writing, I would do it for math, and I would do it for reading. And that way, when you go to have parent-teacher conferences, you have student work, student evidence to support whatever it is that you're saying. When you have meetings with administrators, you have, again, folio to back up and support what you're saying. You have strategies if you are the type of teacher to write down, again, what steps you took to lead to the success of that monitoring. So you're not only monitoring student work, you're monitoring the practices that you utilized to get you there. And so that's how I would create and start that system for progress monitoring.
Thank you for sharing that piece about the pre-test. That is so important. It's helpful for the students, but as you elevate it, it's helpful for the teacher, because you can now say, oh, well, I don't have to teach all of this. They know this much. I can just review this, and I need to go hard on this piece right here. Or it helps you to group the students so that you can, okay, these students need a little bit more work, so I make sure that I, have 2 touch points with them throughout this progress monitoring piece, whereas these students over here, they may be able to work with a little bit more autonomy. So given a pretest, my second principal job, I learned to do pretest. And I would have the teachers do a pretest every Monday on every skill.
Oh
Just
yeah.
give the test cold. Whatever we were teaching, don't tell the students, just give it to them time they walk in. And they use that test to inform their instruction, and then give them the same test on Friday. You don't have to switch the tests up. They're not going to remember it. By the time they pick up on the system, it's too late. Or what's wrong with if they learned what you had on the test and they're able to do it by Thursday? That's the goal, right?
Right.
And so,
right.
And by us using that system, that school was able to move from, and we were high in the beginning because most schools never land in the 66th percentile. We were in the 66th percentile. We moved to the 90th. 90% of our students across the board were proficient in reading, math, and writing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because weekly, we assessed before we taught and we assessed after, and we used both sets of data. The after data was used for reteaching. The before data was used to actually do the teaching, and it informed our do nows, it informed our exit tickets and everything. So thank you so much for sharing that. And you also mentioned elevating vocabulary in the lesson and in the lesson units. Talk to me about that, because one of the things that I deeply believe is that if students, and it's not, I don't just deeply believe it, I know it. If you don't own the vocabulary, you can't own the content.
Right. Very true. And so a part of a lot of lessons, they have the objective to be that students know the lesson or the unit vocabulary. And while that is essential, we want to be intentional about how we instruct that, how we deliver that. So when it comes to vocabulary, especially in the elementary level, you want to make it engaging so that the students have something to remember it by. Also pulling on those different learning styles, kinesthetic movement, to strengthen the retention of that vocabulary term. So every time that they hear it, if you provide a movement to go along with it, now they know the word, they're engaged, and they're listening for that vocabulary term the next time. Another way to leverage that the vocabulary words is to incorporate it into their writing. So having them explain what it is that you taught, what is that concept that you spent so much time on, but you have to incorporate the vocabulary in it to show that you have indeed met that objective. And so by doing it this way, you meet the objective of the lesson, of the unit, you meet the objective of having students engaged, both physically and cognitively. And that's the power, and you have them enhance their writing skills. So you can take vocabulary and do so much with it to leverage many different things within your teaching practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so many teachers, they just kind of gloss over the vocabulary like it's not important. The vocabulary is like the oil and the gas in the car to me. It's the oil and the gas of the lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I don't have the vocabulary, I'm not learning. And that's why you'll have students, they can't explain to you. You ask, because when I go and visit classrooms, I ask students, what are you learning? And I expect them to be able to tell me that objective pretty much, because that's what you're learning. And so many students don't know it, because I've been in classes where I'm observing teachers, and teachers will start off by saying, well, we covered the objective yesterday.
The objective carries throughout.
Absolutely. That's just like buying a car
every day.
Yes, that's just like buying a car and say, well, it had gas in it when we bought it. No, you need gas every time you move that car. Absolutely.
Because that's how you strengthen those synapses in their brain. That's how you make those connections stronger, and how they're able to retain that information longer.
Yes, thank you for sharing that brain research, because that's what I spent a lot of time in brain research when I became an elementary principal. And I tell anyone, until you've done elementary, that's a responsibility. I don't miss it. I don't miss elementary at all. And the kindergartners either. No.
I love elementary. That's my favorite age group.
I love to visit with them.
Yeah.
But I don't want to keep up with them. Oh, you think the high schoolers, they have an agenda when they're out moving. The elementary kids, if they get loose, they don't know what they're doing. They're just out there roaming. And you got to find them and you're responsible for them.
That's true.
And they want to get away. And
That's
especially when
true.
school first started, those running kindergartners trying to run behind mama's car. Like, how did he get away?
Oh yeah.
You just running. So yes, I loved elementary. It really strengthened my leadership, and it strengthened my ability to understand teaching and learning, because you've really got to teach
Yeah.
at that elementary level, because you're not starting necessarily with a blank slate, but you're somewhat starting with an academic blank slate.
Mhm.
So everything that they're
Right.
getting
Right.
academically, almost, you're kind of like teaching it to them. You're teaching them how to learn. By the time they
Right.
get to high school, they do have some, you know,
Hmm. Hmm.
knowledge of how to learn, how to study, how to go to class, how to do this. In elementary school, you're tying shoes, you're doing lunch plates, you're buttoning
Right.
pants. I mean, just
Right.
all kinds of stuff.
Everything.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and they're doing it with limited experience. So
yes,
as the teacher, you have to find ways to get creative, make the material relevant to them. And it's like, how can I make this relevant to a 5-year-old? They haven't done
absolutely,
anything.
absolutely.
But that's when you take movies and you take shows and you take games and you take things that are in the world of a 5-year-old and you make it relevant.
Thank you for sharing that. You get in their world. You
Yes.
meet them where they are, and that's really what teaching is. You
That's
meet the
it.
students where they are. So that is awesome. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share with our new teachers?
I would say that new teachers, you are necessary, you are needed. More specifically, I want us as new teachers to focus on being givers. I know a lot is asked of you, but that's really the essence of our job. We are givers of knowledge. We are givers of skills. We're givers of our time. We're givers of our resources. And so understanding that your heart has to be rooted in giving, and whatever you give, it will come back to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that I'm focusing on is I want them to be very strategic with their giving.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
I push teachers as a principal. I never allowed teachers to spend their own money on anything that was for the school. If they wanted to
Mm-hmm.
buy something for a child that needed it, that was fine. But do not buy anything for this school, because there's enough
Right.
money in every building to take care of that building. Because you don't see anyone in corporate
Mm-hmm.
America out decorating the lobby. You don't
You're right
see
about
anyone
that.
in the doctor's office decorating the lobby. That's done through their budget. And that's the same thing I push
Right.
teachers for, because I want teachers, first of all, to be paid what they're worth. And if you're not paid what you're worth, you definitely don't give away what you're making back to the school.
Right.
And I'm okay with saying that, because I
Absolutely.
didn't allow teachers to do it. And I didn't do much of it. I did things for students, but no, I'm not buying anything to decorate that classroom. There's bulletin board
Mm-hmm.
paper, construction paper in that building, and there's glue and tape and staples.
Right.
And we're going to
Right.
create our environment with that. That's
I
kind of what
like
I
it.
push teachers to do. And I'm also on a mission to help teachers stop giving up so much of their time.
Yes. Now we definitely agree on that. I am big on boundaries and personal time. So much so that at my last job, I to had to let my leadership know, hey, if you want me to respond to emails at a certain time, then you might want to send them at a certain time, because after 5 o'clock, I'm off. I'm not checking my emails. I'm not responding to anything, especially not on my personal phone. I'm not checking work
Thank
related
you.
materials on my personal phone. If that's what you want, supply me with the work phone or whatever. But and so at first it was a little pushback, but she understood at the end, and she actually started doing that for herself. And so I
Absolutely.
think sometimes you just have to be a model and speak up and say, hey, this is my time. This is my personal property. Work should not touch this device. So yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you, Ms. Chapman, for joining us on the National New Teacher Support Podcast, brought to you by New Teacher University. You have really shared some gems and nuggets with our new teachers. I know they're going to benefit greatly from it. And as soon as we finish this recording, I'm going to get with you so that we can schedule our next recording, because I know that you have a wealth of information to share with our new teachers. And I'm excited that we're colleagues in the same work. We're focused on new teachers here at New Teacher University, and you're focused on new teachers at Elementary Education Evolved. So thank you so much, Ms. Chapman, the CEO of Elementary Education Evolved, for joining us this evening and sharing with us on this topic, goal getters, teaching with a purpose, and that is goal, GOAL getters. So let's set some goals. Let's go and get them. And thank you for joining us again on the National New Teacher Support Podcast, brought to you by New Teacher University. I'm your host and your principal, Dr. Terry Ross. We hope you enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all on our next episode. So thank you for joining us. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.